Welcome back to the Midtown Madness podcast. Peter Hale, Zach Miller, and a very, very special third man in, Ross Chaifetz, joining us on the show as a special guest host for the evening. Ross, good to have you on the show, man.
Thanks, Zach. Good to see you guys again.
Yeah, we missed you at the game. We heard your dad wasn't had a little touch of bronchitis. Feeling better?
Yeah, he's doing better now. Yeah, it just would have been a tough go, and he's trying not to be around others when he's sick. But unfortunately, we weren't able to be there. It was a good one, but I'll be out there again soon. Try to get back to shape. The atmosphere was electric. It looked like on Saturday.
Yeah, you missed sitting next to Colonel Sanders and his chickens.
That was hilarious. And it's funny, the first couple minutes of the game, I was looking at courtside. Half the side of the court was empty, and I'm thinking, gosh, where's everybody? And then the chickens come stumbling in with Colonel Sanders himself.
That was great. Yeah, my son loved that. He was into it once he saw that.
I think all the I want to say like half the people in the arena didn't realize that wasn't like a put on thing by the athletic department. Like it wasn't part of the show. It was just the four guys that do this every time.
Yeah, and they're notorious. I mean, once a year they come out with some funky costumes. I think last year they did like a Mario Luigi type of enactment. I don't know. But good for them. Keeps it entertaining, right?
Yeah, no, and speaking of entertaining, I mean, in a way, you want to call it entertaining. The George Mason game, going back to Wednesday, man, a double overtime thriller. And I think we just call this one the Yuri Collins game.
I think it's going to be known as that forever. I mean, this is easily one of the best performances I've ever seen by a SLU player. I think you got to put it up there with like Larry Hughes at Marquette. There's not many other games. I think Bonner had a 40-20 game once, but this is definitely up there with those. 35 points is tied for 16th most in SLU history, and then he happens to put on a top 5 all-time assist game with 13 assists. Just an incredible usage rate and all-around performance by Yuri.
What did you see in that one from Yuri, Ross? Just he was on a different level.
He was, and he just stepped it up to a pace that others couldn't keep up with. I mean, he truly took the game over, especially in overtime. I mean, he was a man on a mission, and no one could stop him. And, you know, it's funny. I saw things floating around on Twitter, quotes from Yuri talking about that watch list that he wasn't included on. And he was talking about how it didn't get to him, but I think that's a load of crap. I mean, he was playing with such attitude and such energy. I couldn't help but think that was in the back of his mind the whole time. And, you know, not only in the Mason game, it clearly carried through to Dayton as well. But what a performance by Yuri. I mean, you could see it in his eyes. And one of the things I liked about it is he's starting to show a little energy and a little heart, and you're seeing his passion. You know, in the past, he was kind of just deadlocked, not a lot of emotion, but it's starting to come through. And I like that in Yuri. I think he's getting a little bit of that from Nesbitt maybe.
Yeah, no, it's funny you mentioned that because one of the last additions to the notes I just made was, and I guess we can even talk about it more in the Dayton game, but this team is really playing with a really hard edge right now. They're walking with a lot of swagger. They're embracing that villain role a little bit more, I think, and I think it really is being rubbed off of Nesbitt to the entire team. And if that's the kind of team, like that's the kind of team I want the Billikens to be. And if Nesbitt is going to keep bringing that energy and that edge, and that's going to be our identity for the next 4 years, I'm all for it. It's going to be a great ride.
Yeah, I think we had a lot of that edge with Goodwin and French for 4 seasons. I think we kind of got used to that. Those are 2 pretty tough, gritty players. Goodwin, obviously, a lot more vocal and everything. But yeah, if they're bringing that back, I mean, you're right. That's not something we've really seen a ton from them so far. But Yuri's confidence right now is off the charts. I mean, the way he's played in these last 2 games, and I don't know how much of that is a chip on his shoulder from kind of being left out of that national conversation. I look at that watch list. Those are the guys who are like, they were like the 5 stars coming out of high school. You know, it's not that watch list to me was not rewarding the guys who are necessarily playing the best point guard basketball in college right now. It really felt like we think these are the best pro prospects or something like that. But if that's what it takes to give Yuri a chip on his shoulder, I can't believe the confidence he's playing right now. And one of the things about his game earlier in the season that kind of made me nervous is when he tried to do too much of the scoring himself. But that's kind of worked out for us lately. I don't know what you guys see in that. I don't necessarily mind a lot of these shots he's taking now. He's finishing at a pretty high rate.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I love his confidence and his willingness to pull up for the occasional three. I mean, I think that's something that we saw sort of sporadically out of him over the last couple of years, but now he's shooting it with confidence, and it's dropping at a relatively significant rate. And so to be able to not only spread the floor with another shooter, of course, but for the defense to have to keep Yuri honest as a shooter, not only a pass maker, but a shooter, is changing the attitude of the team and the makeup of the team. And not only from three-point range. I mean, you're seeing him kind of pull up from the elbow. I think, there's probably a series of 3 or 4 games in a row now where Yuri has had the ball in his hands at the end of the first half. And every time he's pulling up from three or driving to the hoop or pulling up from the elbow, and he's made a good amount of those shots. And so his confidence, to your point, Pete, is through the roof. And it's creating a whole new dimension of scoring for the team.
He's always been a guy who's, 5 foot, 10, 6 feet tall, and but walks like he's like the tallest guy in the room. He walks like he's got the biggest muscles in the room. He's an alpha. He really is, just in the way he carries himself on and off the court, I think. And he's done that since he arrived on campus.
He's always been tough as nails. I watched his career pretty closely at St. Mary's. Not that I could actually make it to many games, but watched as much tape as I could and really tracked what he was doing game to game. Not to mention his time in AAU as well. And he's never been a guy who shows any fear whatsoever. It's just that he's taking it to another level right now. So yeah, you're both right about his toughness, but to see him be as vocal as he's been, as you mentioned. And then it is interesting, Ross, when you talk about those last second shots at the end of halves or at the end of a game, when you've got a pure point guard like Collins like that, and we've got some good shooters and playmakers on the wings, I almost always want to see a pass made to get as good a shot as possible before the half goes. I don't necessarily like the trend of guys just hanging on to it themselves. I mean, I guess it does cut down on chances for, turnovers or, I guess they can control the clock a little bit more if they keep it in their hands, but still. And yet here he is taking those shots and hitting them, whether he's driving or whether he's pulling up from three. So whatever he's doing, I mean, keep doing it.
And I think the other thing that's worth noting is the amount of control and composure that he's playing with. It feels like he's really limited the turnovers. At the beginning of the season, there was a point at which I felt he was trying to force a lot, maybe because he kind of knew that, Javonte was no longer around and he was trying to open up opportunities for other players. But now he seems to know where everybody's going to be. He's not forcing a lot. It feels as if he's limited the turnovers, which, obviously is adding a whole nother level of efficiency to the way that he plays.
Yeah, I mean, he had to step up in that way in that George Mason game. I mean, you look at the numbers that, Jimerson only played 10 minutes in the first half because of fouls. And then the big men had foul trouble. Linson and Okoro were both out of the game and didn't play in overtime. So you've really minimized our scoring punch there. And Colin just said, "I'll take it. I'll put it on my shoulders."
It is pretty incredible to wind up. Per 35 points aside, if you can put those aside, 13 assists without Jimerson in the second part of the first half. And honestly, Jimerson in the second half, I'd have to go back and watch more how he was guarded and everything, but he was certainly not getting the looks he wanted. He wasn't necessarily himself. He did not score once he came back in. Second half, both overtimes, all 8 of his points were in that first 10 minutes before he got his second foul. So for Yuri to have 13 assists still without his number one weapon, hitting is pretty remarkable. When you add up Yuri's 11 field goals with his 13 assists, that's 24 out of our 31 field goals that he either scored or assisted on. Just an incredible amount of offense running through the guy in this one.
At minimum, he contributed directly to, let's say, 13 assists. Conservatively is 26 points. 35 points scored. That's 61 points.
Right.
Of 90. So,
Yeah.
I mean, over 2/3 at least of the points were directly
most of the rest is free
related to Yuri.
throws.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So he directly contributed to nearly over 2/3 of our points. So
just incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it truly was a sight to behold. I think the turning point in overtime really was actually the turning point to me. Not only the Yuri asserting himself, but was also the defensive play of both Hargrove and Thatch. I thought that was just in putting Thatch on him was a masterstroke of genius by Travis Ford, I thought.
I would agree with that, and I think Travis redeemed himself a bit in that call to put Fred on Oduro, because frankly I didn't understand at the end of regulation. I figured he would have given Traore a little bit of run just to preserve Linson and Okoro a little bit. And, Traore could have been a guy that would have come off the bench, no fouls, could have played real rough against Oduro. I'm surprised he didn't. And, in overtime, it was clear that Traore was getting pretty much eaten alive. We were down by 5 or 6 points at one point. So Travis threw Hargrove on him, which, was an okay play call. I think Hargrove maybe had a block or two, but I don't think he could keep up with the physicality. But when Fred was matched up with him, it brought a whole level of effectiveness, because we all know how Fred plays. He's a bulldog, and damn, is he strong. And so to put a guy like him on Oduro, who, by the way, has the highest vertical on the team, as I understand it, Fred Thatch, was a really, really brilliant stroke of genius coaching by Travis, in my opinion.
And he was, he was banking on the fact that Oduro really doesn't handle the ball all that well. He is one of Oduro's biggest weaknesses is handling the ball. One of Fred's strengths, not only his vertical, is his quick hands and his ability to be down low and kind of swipe that ball away. And eventually that was the game right there. It was Fred Thatch stealing it from Oduro.
Oduro's an awesome player. He's a huge matchup problem for our whole team. I like his game a lot. I think you're right. He does have some stuff he's got to work on. He looks like a legit pro prospect to me. He's possibly the conference player of the year if he keeps playing the way he does. So there are no good answers. I agree. It's not a great matchup for Traore once both our other bigs went out. I think TJ did fine on him those first few minutes that he was on him, but again, that's not an assignment you want to leave for a 10-minute stretch or anything like that. And Oduro, 32 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks. He's still got plenty done against us. But yeah, when it came time to close the game, and I did not feel good about overtime or double overtime with both of our big men out. I think you're right. Ford does deserve a lot of credit for figuring out a way to squeeze this one out. Between him and Yuri Collins, they got it done.
And I think if Mason can find a way to add a little bit more endurance to Oduro's game, I think they can be a threat in the A-10 tournament. Because, really, I believe in my heart of hearts, the reason we were able to pull that game off in overtime is because Oduro was just totally winded and totally exhausted. He was relatively ineffective at the free throw line, especially in double overtime. And when it came to the back and forth between Yuri and Oduro, that's where Yuri shined. He clearly is well conditioned. He went 47 minutes and could have looked like he would have gone 10 or 15 more. And Oduro just couldn't handle that. If they can add some more wind to his game, I think he'll be an especially dangerous player.
A couple points in there. One is the free throw shooting. I think Mason did play us pretty smart. I was definitely not thrilled with the officiating. And I don't necessarily think we deserved an 11 foul disparity. I think we had 30 and they had 19, but they were smart about kind of taking it at us down the stretch. They did get our bigs to bite on some stupid stuff, and obviously fouled both of them out at around the 8-minute mark and 4-minute mark. So yeah, I mean, it was one of those where I wasn't happy, and talked to a couple of friends, Tim and Joe, after the game, who kind of, illustrated that a little bit more for me. So Mason did play that well. I got to give him credit there. And then the other thing, you're right. Mason could be a threat in the A10 tournament. And I think not just that, if they get smart about how to keep Oduro fresh, they've got some really nice other pieces out there. That Cooper had 22 points on 5 of 11 3-point shooting against us, and Gaines was everywhere. That dude had 17 rebounds to go with 12 points. Schwartz is a nice player who we shut down a little bit better than those two, but we had problems with more than just Oduro. I think one thing Mason is missing is they just don't have much of a bench. 2 bench points in this game, but I was really impressed with their starting 5. But that's good to know. If we get into another overtime slugfest with these guys, we can wear them down.
I think you mentioned Gaines, and Gaines did a good job on Jimerson. Jimerson just never got into a rhythm in this one. Didn't, with that 10 minutes out, you come in the second half cold, and that's tough. At the end of the game, Ross, did you see Kim English's post-game comments?
I didn't.
So essentially he basically said, all you have to do is get in his face, be athletic and long, and you can stop Jimerson. Basically, Kim English putting his foot in his mouth when it comes to talking about St. Louis University. There are the comments from when he played at Mizzou where he said, I like SLU, they're like our little brother. And so he's got there's a little beef there. What do you think of that? I mean, to completely discredit a guy who's 0.1 point off the leading scorer in the conference, I don't get that.
I think it was their game plan, and I think they did it effectively, but I think it hurt them in the long run. I think one of the things that I've recognized over the last, maybe 5 to 10 games is the opposing team's game plan is essentially coming down to one of two options, in my opinion: shut down Jimerson or shut down Yuri. And they can choose to shut down Jimerson to eliminate our highest scoring player, but then they leave so many options open for Yuri, and the field is essentially wide open for him. And so that's what I mean when I guess I say it backfired a bit by locking in so much on Jimerson and taking him down from 18 points a game, whatever he was averaging, to 8 points a game. That unlocked a whole playing field for Yuri, and it created such efficiency for him, and he was able to go off because of that. And so it's easy for a coach like English to make those comments after the fact. At the end of the day, the strategy didn't work. We won the game. So he can eat that. But, that's one of the things that I feel that I've recognized is when the strategy becomes eliminate Gibson Jimerson, it opens up a lot for the rest of the team.
I think it's also a strategy that maybe earlier in the season would have paid off more than it is now. If you're scouting this team, you don't necessarily know Yuri Collins is about to have the best week of his life. It's not just that, like you said, they're creating more opportunities for him. He's bringing a little bit more to it as well, a little bit more confidence, a little bit more willingness to shoot. Those are things they probably weren't quite counting on as well. So I don't necessarily think it's a bad strategy. I think Dayton has thrown that at us twice, and it did work once in Dayton, but I don't think it's entirely wrong. And I know English has to come up with ways to motivate his guys and make them feel, like they can beat anybody. But I think we probably are a little bit more dynamic than we get credit for, especially with, Linson returning to the lineup, who's more of an offensive threat than our other bigs as well.
Yeah, I think that wraps up this one. Either of you got anything left on this one?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Moving on to the Arch Baron Cup. 72-61 win yesterday afternoon versus Dayton. This one, when the fake rivalry turns into a real rivalry. Like since the A10 podcast, I guess, like revolution started, we've essentially gaslit both fan bases and coaching staffs and players into believing this. Like, I mean, truthfully, there is a rivalry there, but they have been gaslit into this being a heated rivalry, and it's pretty incredible over the last 3 years to watch.
It has. And I can't tell you now how many people have kind of like asked me about like the Arch Baron Cup being like, this is a thing I should know about, but I can't believe I don't know. I haven't known the name until more recent years. I don't really get it. And of course, it's got its own fake history and everything. And I love it. It was, like you said, completely willed into existence, and people are really picking up on it. And I have to think that this game it really feels like the first true legendary Arch Baron Cup kind of slugfest. I mean, maybe I'm only seeing that from SLU's perspective because we've lost the last 5 and they've been mostly close. And, 2 of those were to that 29-2 Obi Toppin team. But this one feels like a real classic that people are going to remember for a long time.
It is. And it has to be. I mean, you talk about sort of key moments in the rivalry. One that I think about was the Jalen Crutcher shot a couple years back at Chaifetz Arena when Dayton came in, I think 13 in the country, keep me honest there. And Crutcher put up that shot from way behind the 3-point line with 0 to no time left. That was a moment that, Pete, you talked about sort of the viewpoint from the SLU fan base. I think from Dayton's perspective, that was the point where they felt like, okay, this makes sense. This is a rivalry. We hate these guys. And that was their moment. And now, the last Dayton game at Dayton to me was there wasn't a key moment that sort of reignited the rivalry, if you will. And this game, I felt the same way until something happened with about 90 seconds left. And I'll let you guys maybe pick up on that. But that was the moment that the Dayton fan base got extremely heated.
Yeah, we're going to get to that one. But first of all, the Harewood Horse Trophy, the fan vote, it's going to Martin Linson in this one. What do you guys think of the fans' choice with Martin Linson as the Harewood Horse winner?
Yeah, I think it's a fine choice. I mean, he's the leading scorer, and the thing about him in this game is he kind of looked like himself again for the first time. Like, he's been playing under a minute restriction. He's been playing hurt, not fully himself. And even if he's not 100%, and who knows if he will be for the rest of his playing career, which is just college playing career, which is just going to be the next couple months here. It still looked like he was able to do all of the things that he normally does. And of course, he gives you a perfect Martin Linson game. In 19 minutes, he's got 17 points, 5 of 5 from the field, and then he's drawing fouls as well and goes 7 of 8 for the line, which is just beautiful. He's not a big rebounder. We all know that. It's fine, but he really got it done offensively, and he and Yuri have great chemistry. I think Yuri said after the game, or maybe even before the game on this one, he said, if Linson's out there, he knows I'm going to find him. So I kind of love the combination there. And yeah, I like this pick, of course.
And I think, the other dimension that Linson adds is floor leadership. Yuri is the one guy who's always loud, and I don't mean literally loud, but he commands the floor when you think about who the Billiken's leader is. And when Linson's out there, I mean, he's a presence, and he's speaking, he's communicating to the team, calling out the opposition, and that's a game changer. And to your point, Pete, the chemistry between him and Yuri is incredibly evident. I mean, Yuri passes him open in ways that I've never seen before. It really diversifies the way that we can play through our bigs. Linson and Okoro are both incredibly efficient, but in unique and different ways. And it creates a very tough matchup from an opposition perspective. But I love the way that he and Yuri can sort of collaborate with one another on the floor. It's really pretty to watch. And And as I mentioned, they create plays that even on replays, I watch it and I'm like, how does Yuri see that? So it's very fun. That's how I would summarize it. It's fun to watch. Yuri and Linson have an incredible chemistry.
Yeah, they're always inventive passes. He always comes up with a new way to find Linson. It's like I don't think I've ever seen anyone make the pass he made where and they gushed about it on the broadcast. By the way, full marks to the broadcast team for doing that game remote. I rewatched it this morning and I do like it's got to be the most difficult thing in the world to call a game remotely. I swear to God. But they gushed about that pass where he found, I don't even know how to describe how he found him, but he found him over the top of a guy. It was crazy. It was like a post pass, but it was him finding him under the hoop. It was insane.
Mm-hmm. It's just not a pass that you expect a player to make, even when you've got, the post player's got good position and you've got a passer like Yuri who knows how to find people. You never expect him to make that kind of pass. It was great.
Yeah, and Linson, as we all know, is not the biggest center you're going to find in the A10 or elsewhere. But he's complemented very well by a Fred Thatch or a Terrence Hargrove. And it's fun to watch. They're great rebounders and they clean up slop. Although I will say Linson has been incredibly efficient from the floor. His field goal percentage is outstanding. But for a couple plays where Fred was right under the hoop rebounding, sort of cleaning up. And it's great to see him, for example, as a complement to a Linson. Adds to that size deficit that we may experience when we have Linson on the floor. Because I think he is a smaller center. I want to say he's maybe 6'8". Does that sound right? 6'7"?
Yeah, he's much. He's a kind of a Hassan French size almost, but much more efficient. We talked a little bit about the atmosphere in this one. Chaifetz was absolutely rocking. It felt like 2012 to 2015 again. It really felt like Chaifetz was back to where it could be. We knew it could be.
Yeah, official attendance was 9,411. So not quite a turnout or a sellout, but a really nice turnout. Huge student turnout. And then, the whole Billiken Blizzard theme, everybody in white, kind of adds another element to it. I thought in the first half, at least it played this way on TV, and correct me if I'm wrong what it was like in the building, but it didn't sound that loud on TV. But that first half had no flow to it. I mean, the refs really, they were calling it tight in stretches, and there was never really a time where we were putting together a big run, right? I mean, it kind of felt like Dayton would get close. We'd hit a couple shots. We just kind of went, and once we took that 9-0 run to take the lead, we never gave it up, but they always kind of stayed in arm's distance. And it was really a gritty defensive first half, I thought. So I could kind of see why the crowd was quiet, but they really lit up in the second half.
But, I think, Pete, that's a positive reflection on the Billikens and really the sign of a good team. I mean, we led that game, with the exception of the Dayton three-pointer to open it up. We led that game truly wire to wire. And, I would say, just shooting from the hip here, we were up by at least 8, 9, or 10 points for probably 70 or 80% of the game. And the sign of a great team that I was just reflecting on, every time Dayton pinched it back to 5 or 6 points, we went on a little mini run and extended it back to 10 or 11 and kept Dayton on their heels just enough to sort of settle them down emotionally. And they just never got in the groove that we saw them in when we were at Dayton a couple weeks back.
Yeah, I think that's right. I said the defense in this game was just excellent from start to finish. I thought there were definitely some moments of defensive lapses. A few times we didn't get back in transition. Kobe Elvis hit a couple threes in a row in transition. But for the most part, this team really, really defended well this whole game. And I think that's kind of the cause for that. You're going to have stretches where you're not making shots, as we had a couple in the first half. But the defense never really went through a prolonged period where I thought the effort wasn't there. They were really amped up to play defense in this game.
Yeah, I don't think the defense was the problem. What I really saw was rebounding was a problem. I thought that was where Dayton was scoring a lot of points off of either poor position. I don't even know if it was poor positioning or just unlucky bounces, as we've talked about now 3 weeks in a row. So maybe we're leaning towards poor positioning at this point. Um, and then also like turnovers or not necessarily turnovers or like ill-advised shots, I guess, or ill-advised attempts at shots. You had a couple times in that first half where I think one of them, Jimerson, tried to attack the basket. He may have had Fred Thatch open, and he got blocked, and they went the other way and came down and scored. So really, the defense was there. I felt like it was lapses on the other end that turned into Dayton buckets.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think shot selection does kind of still need some work, and you hope that's the kind of thing. Watch a little video of this game, and realize there's not a whole lot you guys need to clean up to really make this game a laugher from an early point. So I agree with that completely. I don't think turnovers were a big problem here. Yuri did have 6 of them, but we only had 11 as a team, and Dayton only had 8, and that's not many turnovers in a game at all. So I thought it was fairly clean from that perspective. But yeah, you're right. Rebounding and shot selection definitely needed some work here.
Yeah, Kobe Elvis really gave us trouble again. This was the guy that played well at the game at UD Arena, and once again he showed that he may have our number.
Especially that sequence. Sorry to cut you off, Pete, but especially that sequence in the second half where I think it was he who hit those back-to-back threes. That was the only point in the game where I kind of had to check myself a little bit and I felt nervous. But Kobe, I think, has a couple more years in him, and he's a player. I will say, though, without those threes, those back-to-back threes, his stats don't look as impressive, but I think he is the threat. And if we meet Dayton in the A10 tournament, I think he's the guy whose number we've got to have and we've got to lock down. It feels like the offense runs through him when Dayton gets good wins.
Yeah, I agree with that. Soli told us before we played up at Dayton that this is a team that likes to shoot a lot of threes. They only shot 13 in this game. And I'd like to think that's because SLU did a pretty good job taking the perimeter away from them. But they did find it open in transition a few times. He was the only guy on their team that had double digits, and he had 20 points. He also, the thing that I think, not to overlook, this is the second game in a row where he did a really nice job on Jimerson defensively. He had that assignment most of the game, and we could say all we want about him, grabbing, tugging, hacking, whatever he does stay on Jimerson like his shadow. And if the refs are going to give him a little leash to be a little physical with him, then you can see why he takes it. So I have been pretty impressed with his game on both ends of the floor. And I think Dayton has some other talent, some pretty good shooters on this team that we just didn't see much of them this game. The rest of the team managed to be fairly anonymous in this one. I thought Holmes was solid again, but he was obviously a lot better when we played him there.
Yeah, I want to talk about Collins in this one. Well, actually, I want to talk about key plays, plays that stood out to me in this game. There were 2 plays, and one is the broken down play that ended up in a Jimerson 3-pointer. Yeah. And then one was Yuri Collins' block, which may have been the most amazing block I've ever seen. And that includes Jordair Jett's block at GW that he sent into the 5th row. And there was a grab block, I think, where one of our guys, I can't remember who it was. This may have been the top 5 on the Mount Rushmore of Billiken blocks. And then the third one, I think, is the Nesbitt dunk, and that really was kind of the exclamation point. How amazing did that block play on TV the way it played in the arena?
It really did. I mean, it's one of those things where he kind of blocked it with both arms, right? Or he had both arms at least in motion. but yeah, I mean, I thought it was great. I thought it was great. The other thing was, it early in the second half or late in the first half, Yuri finished at the basket and just screamed in Smith's face. Do I have that right? He was under the basket, and it was, we talk about him being more vocal, and he really just roared. He like grabbed the ball from him or something. Whatever the play was under the basket, that's one where I really noticed him being vocal in a way that I just am not used to. So that stood out to me as well.
And Zach, the play you mentioned, the broken play, I think in the second half, with Yuri on the floor, TJ on the floor, and then the ball ends up popping over to Gibson, and he pulls up for the three. I saw a funny comment. I'm not sure, might have been on Twitter, maybe on Billikens.com. Somebody made a post alluding to, wow, that was the one play I feel like I see every week in college basketball. Some team pulls it off, broken play that ends up in a wide open three, and it's never happened that way for the Billikens. And just a beautiful stroke by Gibson. And that was the moment where I was like, okay, the Billikens are hot today. And it was great for Gibson. It was great for the team. There was a key shot by TJ though, and one of the things I want to get your guys' opinion on is TJ's been relatively quiet over the last couple of weeks, and that's primarily due to, I think, the efficiency of Fred Thatch. But it seemed to have eaten at a bit of TJ's confidence. We've seen some big threes from him though in the last couple of games, and that was a point, especially when TJ hit a big three from the wing at the Dayton game. I want to hear your guys' thoughts on the efficiency of TJ and what you've seen over the last couple of games from him.
Yeah, well, we've talked about that a little bit on the show the last couple of weeks, just how he's definitely been in a slump. He was a really efficient three-point shooter heading into, I don't know when the first, I'd have to look at his game log to see when it fell off, about 5 or so games ago, maybe 6, and you can't find his shot either inside or out since then. But you're right, he has hit one big three in the past 2 games. But he's made some other plays in this one. Like, I don't want to just make it all about his 3-point shooting. What I like about this game is he looked a little down on himself in some previous games, whether it was, I want to say UMass, GW, a couple of these games where he just couldn't find his shot, couldn't finish things, loose balls weren't coming his way, getting unlucky on whistles. I didn't see that at all in this Dayton game. Every minute he was out there, he played like the TJ we're used to, high energy, getting good stops, making big plays, diving after loose balls, bringing exactly the energy that we need from him. So the fact that he hits that three, I think is it's crucial for the confidence he has in his shot. But what's more important to me is that I see him bringing the demeanor and the energy and the effort that we're used to back. And Zach, I don't know if you see it the same way or not.
Yeah, you just missed that personality. That personality, when he loses his confidence a little bit, I think he loses his personality. And that happy-go-lucky nature is what makes him him. And when he has that, he plays well. When he feels good, he plays good. And I just want to see him be happy and not so much worried about how he's playing. Because when he stops worrying about how he's playing and just is in a good mood, I think he plays better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so.
But he was the key to that not only that three, but that broken play that ended up in Jefferson's hands.
Absolutely. We talked about Linson. Okoro is a guy that I thought had some really sneaky good plays in this one. I think one of his biggest criticisms is I think he's been described as a black hole in the post for the ball. The ball goes in the post, he's going up. Everybody knows it in the gym. I think he found he was either Williams or Jones. He kicked it out, one-hand pass, and it was a beautiful pass. And I just don't think he got enough credit around the Twitter sphere and the message board for that.
I agree with that. He only attempted 3 shots in this game, made 2 of them. And I don't want to say like, good, I like that, do that more. Like, that's not it at all. Obviously I want everybody scoring as much as they can, but I think he recognized that Holmes is a tough matchup. Okoro, as good as he is, he's not exactly he doesn't have Linson's post moves. You saw that Yuri pass to Linson where he just in motion spun like 360 left-handed layup finished, just really smooth, old school, on the ground, big man game. Okoro is just, he's a lot more deliberate with the ball. He doesn't have that fluidity in the post. And I think a guy with Holmes's shot blocking ability, his length, his athleticism, it's a tough matchup for Okoro. And I think in this game, he recognized that. And I really think that shows development that we haven't seen yet from him.
And that's kind of the next dimension of our offense that I'm looking for. To the extent Okoro can get much more effective at kicking the ball out from under when he's double teamed. You know, he's such a commanding, you know, physical force, if you will. He's so he's so good at rebounding. He's so long that he commands that double team. And if he can start to get really efficient at kicking that out at the appropriate time to guys like Williams, to guys like Gibson, to guys like Jones, you know, that's when we're going to become super efficient from three. So that's what I would love to see in terms of, you know, offensive developments over the next couple of weeks going into the A-10 tournament. I think that can make a big difference.
Yeah, I'm excited to see. I mean, it's not often that I am able to notice just improvement, but Okoro really has shown a ton of improvement from when he got here. And I thought his spin move to the basket was just amazing too. I didn't know he had that in his repertoire either. So, yeah, I think I think this team is really embracing the bad guy role, and I love it. I love it, and I think, you know, it's rubbing off on the alumni a little bit. Pete, I'm curious I'm curious about what both of you guys saw on TV in the moment. And what your reaction was. And then I didn't see exactly what happened, but I think I have a decent timeline in my head at this point. But what did you guys see at home? And did you notice anything right away before the whistles started going and everything?
Right away, I didn't. So I knew that no one was there and the ball kind of bounced. So obviously we're talking about the aftermath of Nesbitt's dunk with about, 137 left, something like that. Nesbitt dunks the ball, and man, was that cathartic for him. He had a rough game. This was not his best game. He always brings the energy, effort, hustle plays, and we got some of that out of him. But I think he was 0 for 5 at the time, and had spent most of the second half on the bench. And it just wasn't his game. That dunk seemed to just, you know, release the demons for him. I mean, he was basically danced all the way down to the other end of the floor. He was on cloud 9. I was really focused on him because how often do you have to keep your eye on the ball after a dunk? It doesn't matter. It's going to be collected. It's going to be inbounded. It doesn't matter. So I wasn't paying attention to that at all. And really the cameras weren't in real time either. It was quite some time before they gave us anything resembling a replay. And even then I had to go back and watch the broadcast later to really see what had happened after some of what transpired after that. I don't know if it was the same for you, Ross.
Yeah, it felt the same way. I mean, the play occurred so quickly. And to your point, all the attention was on Nesbitt. And so it was unclear as to what had unfolded. And you know, it seemed that there was a bit of confusion in terms of the broadcast until it got locked in on Anthony Grant. And there was fire and fury and hate in his eyes. And all I could think to myself was, oh gosh, something terrible must have happened, right? But man, did he look pissed off. And I get it. You know, you're a coach of a big team going into a hostile environment. You want to stick up for your guys. But, you know, from his perspective, his point of view, to me, it wasn't very evident that he could have possibly known what had happened. And I think, you know, there was a video that circulated on Twitter from, I think, Just Lobs or one of those accounts that kind of peeled back the layers of what did happen. And, you know, to me, it was not justified at all, the reaction that Grant, showcased. I guess, Zach, to answer your original question, no, it wasn't very evident from the broadcast. It felt as though something much worse had happened. I think I think it was just evidence of Dayton really getting caught up in the moment in a game that they were frustrated with. I think that they would have argued there were a lot of bad calls against them in the second half. But man, was there hate in Grant's eyes at that moment.
Oh, yeah, he was really fired up.
Yeah, it was intense, man. And I just the whole thing is weird because Jett's down there, Jordair Jett. So we actually even haven't said that the two people involved in this, the fan, which is funny that people are calling him a fan. It's Jordair Jett. Like Hall of Fame. Put some respect on his name. Like, what are we doing? No, so Jordair Jett's sitting with Mama Jett. Shout out Mama Jett. Underneath the basket. And his mom just sitting there is the funniest thing ever while he's jawing at Dayton. Like, so the ball goes out of bounds, and the confluence of how the ball bounced could never happen. I don't know if you noticed in the video, Jett's up right behind the photographer yelling whatever smack talk, and the ball lands between Jordair Jett's midsection and the back of the photographer. So it's being cradled by these two men. And I'm guessing Jordair, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I'm guessing he just said, come get the ball. Like, that's literally what I would, like, if the ball lands where it landed near him, like, that's what, that's the thing. That's the joke I'm making is like, come get it. Like,
I don't know. In the brief moments that you actually see in the broadcast before it cut away, he's not paying attention to the ball at all. It just kind of incidentally lands there. And Jordair is up on like you said, the back of the photographer, and the ball lands at just the weirdest spot between them. But he's not paying attention to it at all. And I think at this point, he, like everybody else in the building, is yelling for Nesbitt, because that dunk, it was an incredible dunk for one. Two, exercising the demons for Nesbitt
and the Billikens in general.
I thought Nesbitt was just going to pop out of the gym. So I think Jett is feeling that energy at that point. He's not yelling at Dayton necessarily. It's not until Smith rushes over, and Smith goes pretty deep for a player on the baseline, to go after the ball. And then it's the second player. I think Elvis is the second player in, and that's when all the other players and the coaches start coming over. And by this point, Jett has backed up and he's kind of doing like the head tap thing. So now he's talking at him, but I don't think Jett's intention was necessarily to like draw the date. Prove me wrong if there's footage out there, but I think it's all just kind of an unlucky bounce of the ball that actually turned it into a conflict. I don't know that, Jordair had some words to say, but they were nothing overly aggressive or inappropriate. He was doing one of these and saying, I'm right here, whatever. And, on the video that I referenced that was circulating, it was pretty clear that it was the Dayton player that was physically encroaching over the sideline onto Jett. Unclear if it was, with the intention of grabbing the ball or whatever, but it was evident that the referees were physically pushing him back. And I think probably what got Grant so heated up is when he came over to diffuse the situation, I have a feeling that his players probably exaggerated or told a little bit of a white lie about what had truly happened. And that's probably where the tempers flared a little bit. But it was very obvious to me that it was the Dayton player who was kind of stepping out of bounds to grab the ball, and the referee had to sort of get him back into play and resume the game. I think probably after the ball landed where it did, I'm guessing Jett starts backing up and the ball goes down to the floor, right? Mm-hmm. So now the ball's behind that row of photographers, and nobody's giving it back to the player, but who's paying attention to the ball at this point? Probably most people around there don't know it's even there. And Jett, isn't bending down to pick it up or whatever. It was just a really awkward landing spot for it, I think, is what it comes down to. And Smith, obviously, like you said, he's frustrated at this point. Nothing's gone his way. He just wants to grab the ball, and it's back there somewhere. Just I guess kind of an unlucky bounce, but Dayton fans are saying after the game that Jordair is pushing their players and stuff like that. And I mean, they're just like completely fabricating what happened. And the more time goes on, it becomes clear that there wasn't a whole lot of there. But Zach, maybe you can sort of cover what happens to Jett immediately after this all goes down.
That's funny because I don't know. I mean, I know he left, right? I know he went through the tunnel where I was sitting. Um, and I'm sure he just ended up in Lorenzini's to have a beer, or a Jack and Coke, whatever he wanted to drink. But really, like, I don't, because his mom didn't go with him.
No.
His mom's like, I'm watching the game, man. Like,
There's a minute and a
Did
half
she
left,
not?
and I've got
I
great
didn't realize that.
no, she stayed there. She's like, well, we had good seats.
Right.
I'm not leaving. But I think it's interesting, the whole situation. I'll finish up with Jordan, then I'll talk about why it's interesting. But no, I think, like, I mean, I don't know if he was escorted out or asked to leave. I don't think they were, like, already telling him, like, trying to get him to move. I don't think that was a thing. I think this was the whole crux of him moving. And I think, I don't know if kicking him out is the right word, more or less like just appeasing Anthony Grant.
Yeah,
And
let's get him out of there.
let's get it over with. Let's finish the game. We don't need anything else. I mean, we're in a post Malice at the Palace world. But to be honest, like, kicking him out or escorting him out or having him leave was the best thing they could have done for the crowd. The crowd popped like it was a pro wrestling event. It was insane.
Yeah,
But
standing out.
shame. I hate to say this, but kind of shame on Slew for doing that in a moment where he's being inducted into the Hall of Fame. There's no evidence of wrongdoing at that point. The camera did pan to Janet, having a discussion with Jordair, and presumably that was the point where she suggested or encouraged him to move or leave or whatever. But I had saw on Twitter people were talking about, oh, he didn't really get kicked out, they just asked him to move seats. But if you look at Jordair's tweet, he said something, and I have it right here. He said, never liked Dayton anyway, I beat the traffic, which, if you take that literally or you assume what he means, he was asked to leave, right? He left the arena, he beat the traffic
And left Mama Jet there by herself.
Yeah, but the irony of the whole thing is, I think if you take the NCAA rule book literally, a technical should have been called regardless on Grant and the staff.
Well, not Grant.
No,
because technically, I mean, you could make the case for Grant that he was trying to defuse the situation. Okay, that's in the rule book. It says the head coach is the only one that can leave the bench. It says if a fight breaks out or may break out. And I would take that as a may break out situation, for sure. And Anthony Grant leaving the bench that far.
But Zach,
the rest of the guys, there should have been 5 technicals called at least.
But sorry to intervene. I agree with you, but you can say, if a fight were to break out, but every Billiken was at the Billiken bench. There was not a Billiken in this altercation.
Right.
It was the Dayton huddle under the hoop screaming at Jordair and whoever. So you can make the argument, oh, a fight would have broken out, but a fight between who? Because there wasn't a uniform Billiken in sight.
Yeah, I think that's right. Ford did a really good job of just corralling them around the Slew bench. And I think he even put his back to the whole situation. So even after the game, they asked Ford about it, and he's like, I didn't even see it. I had my back to it. I don't know what happened. He just kind of he's just like, I have nothing to do with this. You guys, that's your problem.
The crowd egged on Jordair. I was guilty of it. I was egging him on.
Well, I mean, the fact that it's Jordair is crazy. Like in most situations, this is just going to be some dude, right? I mean,
it's going to be Zach Miller.
Oh, God help us all.
Honestly,
or Colonel Sanders and the chickens.
Honestly, I gotta thank Jordair at the end of the day, because I was just as rowdy, and so I mean Jordair, taking the heat for forever. I mean Jordair was awesome. That's what I want to see out of our alumni. I've always said that it like, we see the older guys, right? We see the high marks. We see the Roland Grays, by the way. Shout out Roland Gray for hanging out with me yesterday. We see those guys around the program, the Bonners, all those guys show up at games. We don't get to see, the younger guys as much. And I love to see that passion come out of these guys. that played for the school and represent the Billikens.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, a lot of people from Jett's generation and younger, I mean, they're all over the world. So a lot of them are still
That's
playing.
true.
You know, who knows where a lot of them are. Well, I mean, I'm sure we could figure it out, but I guess my point is they're pretty spread out, and not all of them are able to to be around as much. So I definitely understand the older guys who are retired, who have resettled in St. Louis and are working there professionally and everything. Um, but to see that, especially from somebody like Jett, who's he's from St. Paul, he's not from St. Louis, he's not necessarily going to be around the city all the time. To see him really getting into it for SLU, really supporting this team, tweeting back and forth with our players before and after the game, and then being like, I hate Dayton anyway. And he even had some back and forth with some of the Dayton fans and media types after the game. It was great. You're exactly right, Zach. I love to see that like put into this sort of rivalry situation for SLU. We haven't had nearly enough of that.
Well, I think what was it? What happened earlier in the season that I thought like it was good that it happened, but I think Ford. Oh, it was the Lucina Traore dance, right?
Oh,
so, but this is the kind of stuff that gets fans to come back.
Yeah,
I mean, like everybody's walked away from that game. I would say 80% of the people that went to that game in Billiken blue and white walked away from that game not talking about the final score.
Oh, yeah.
Not talking about Yuri Collins, not talking about Nesbitt, not talking about Okoro, Linson, nobody on the floor. They talked about Jordair Jett. And they talked about that incident. That incident lit up that crowd, lit up that arena, and that's going to get people to come back. That is what's exciting. And that's that hard edge that I'm talking about, that kind of like that just like the jerks of the A10, man. Like I want to be that.
And that's where I was going earlier, Zach, when I mentioned the couple key moments that really reignited this rivalry. That's clearly one. I mentioned the Jalen Crutcher shot. It's not necessarily about the scores or the outcomes of each of these games. It's what happens in between and the behind the scenes and the interventions between the players that make this rivalry what it truly is. Because, no rivalry is exciting if you're just going back and forth with wins and losses. It's about, what the fans get to witness in between, the shot clock, so to say.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I mean, I went to the Dayton game at Dayton right before the pandemic started, back in February of 2020, whatever. And my three buddies who went with me, we talk a lot more about everything that happened around that game than we do about the game itself, because that was like the last time we all got together before the pandemic. We went out, had a wild night, everything like that. I mean, it's exciting to think that there's a lot more SLU fans who've been hungry for that kind of thing, or even more casual fans from just around St. Louis or wherever, who now are like, well, that game is appointment viewing every year. We got to go to that game. And not only that, maybe I take my kids to more games throughout the year. Maybe maybe next season's the one where I get season tickets. Everybody got their money's worth and then some in that crowd.
This has to be the first incident of shenanigans, actual true incident of shenanigans that will be listed on Blackburn Review's abridged history of the Arch Baron Cup. Like he couldn't write a story. He couldn't write this. He couldn't if he wanted to. He's not that creative. And he wrote he created this whole rivalry.
Well, the interesting thing is going to be the spin that's put on that, though, because we went from Dayton games right after the game saying, up in our mentions saying, you should be ashamed of your former player. That's a 30-year-old man shoving 18-year-olds. He should be banned from the arena for life. I'm going to harass the university president and the A10 commissioner if they don't. And they go from that to maybe realizing there's nothing to kick him out of the arena for. They only did it to, like you said, appease Grant. So I do wonder, is this kind of a Rashomon situation, depending on your point of view as a fan? Maybe you have a much different telling of that chapter.
And then they take to Wikipedia to totally sabotage Jordair Jett's Wikipedia page. Like, it's just so immature.
Oh, it was so badly written too. It was just like you could just see it in a huff. Like I'll show them.
No, I loved it, man. It's the best. It's the best thing to happen in Chaifetz in a long time. It was the most entertaining thing to happen in Chaifetz in a long time, and that's a building that gets a lot of events. I just that's our like crosstown shootout. Like that's our zip 'em up right there. That's that flashpoint that where like I said, a fake rivalry turns into a real rivalry, and I mean it's so cool. It was so cool. You couldn't have written it any better than that.
And I'll tell you, next time I'm at a game, if I've got open seats, the first person I'm inviting to sit courtside with me is Jordair Jett.
I love it.
Sorry, Zach. I know you've been asking for a while.
I know. I haven't got it. I haven't got the
Zach's
call.
like, yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, put him on the screen too, and fans are gonna light up to see him again.
Oh my god. I mean, he's got to. No, I think the Dayton game next year, he has to be sitting center court with you. Has to.
Well, we might even have to if we meet Dayton in the A10 tournament, somebody might have to fly him out there. I mean, he's like a centerpiece at this point.
Yeah, that it's gosh.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Jordair Jett's if he wasn't a true Billiken legend already, he is now. And that was just an unbelievable performance all the way around from Billiken Nation in general, and that was just a great time.
It really was.
And what a position it puts us in. I mean, you saw the rankings start to shift after that game. We're now, I mean, ranking wise, number 2 in the conference. I mean, if you ask me, top to bottom, I think we're the best team in the conference. I think we'll find out in a couple of weeks when we go head to head with Davidson. But that was a key matchup. I mean, it really puts us in position to, I would argue we're clearly on the bubble at this point. We control our own destiny. Mm-hmm. Now we're in a position where win and we're in. And that game was a critical piece to that equation.
Yeah, it really was. We've spent the last few weeks playing the bottom half teams, UMass a couple times, George Washington. We've had a lot of games against teams that we're supposed to beat, right? We didn't win all of them. We lost that first one at UMass, one that got away. But now we've got we're looking ahead at VCU, at Davidson. We've got some really serious games coming up here to kind of see where we stand. And I like this team a lot. I like the way we played defense in that game. There's a lot of reasons to think that we're going to compete for this title, possibly even this regular season title from Davidson.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun game. We're going to definitely have to clean up our 3-point defense because Davidson shoots the lights out of the ball at an incredibly efficient clip. Just going to hit around the A10. Tuesday, Richmond beat Duquesne 74-57. Davidson 81, Bonaventure 76. Wednesday, GW beats LaSalle 89-87. Fordham beats Rhode Island 61-55. Dayton crushes VCU by 30, 82-52. And did this one give you guys a little pause? I mean, going into the Dayton game, I was way overconfident. I had this like insane confidence. What did you guys think? Did this make you nervous?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I saw this result and was like, are these guys starting to click? Because it's always been, they're super young. They're like almost all first or second year players. But if they're starting to click, man, look out. I mean, that's a team that's going to be hard to beat down the stretch. But again, the up and down play continues. So I guess, they haven't been able to be as consistent yet as I think they'd like to be. The talent is certainly there to beat anybody on any night, though. So yeah, that one had me really nervous because VCU just does not let up that many points.
Yeah, and the timing of it was interesting as well because we came off that double overtime win, and I remember being in Carter's Spaces and we were chatting about the game right after as I was watching Dayton, wrap up a nearly 30-point victory at VCU. And you mentioned, Pete, VCU doesn't give up losses like that, let alone, at their own arena. I mean, that does not happen. And the commentators on CBS Sports after were mentioning that as well. And so a swing of emotions coming off of that Mason win, thinking, wow, we're hot, feeling confident going into the Dayton game, and then watching them just absolutely pulverize VCU was a little bit of a gut check on the emotions there.
Yeah, I agree. It was, and I was worried about the double overtime versus, a 30-point win. You get to rest your guys a little bit. So I was a little worried about that. But the Billikens carried on the momentum through to this game and just beat Dayton. Richmond beats Bonaventure on Friday night in one of the most disjointed basketball games I've ever watched. 71-61. Saturday, St. Joe's beats Fordham 72-69. UMass beats Rhode Island 78-67. LaSalle 83, Mason 78, Davidson 78, GW 73, and finally VCU 71, Duquesne 62. And as Ross, you mentioned, SLU is now in second behind Davidson. VCU and Dayton both 7-3. Richmond in fifth at 6-4. How excited before we let you go, Ross? How excited are you about this stretch run and the prospects of this team, potentially making an NCAA tournament without an All-American?
Very excited. I mean, the fact that we are where we are without Javante Perkins is a testament to the mentality that Travis Ford has been able to instill in the team. We're at an interesting point in the season where we're starting to trickle up on March. And I think, as we've seen, this is when Travis Ford's teams really begin to evolve. And it feels like over the last couple of years, there's been a key loss that's occurred every year on the back end of January or early February that has really triggered a locked-in mentality for the Billikens. This year, it was obviously the UMass loss, the Q3 loss at UMass, but they've really righted the ship. I mean, I think we're firing on all cylinders. We've got a diverse set of scorers at this point. I'm very excited. I think we're in position to make a run here and potentially end up in the NCAA tournament. But, I'm equally nervous. And so I say that with a bit of reality. We got a tough stretch coming up. We got obviously LaSalle this week, but then we go home and home with St. Bonaventure, who I think was picked to win the conference. They had our number last year in the A10 tournament. Not an easy team to beat. So they can't be overlooked. And then VCU, and then Davidson. So we got a tough run here. I'm excited about where we're at, but I think the next couple games will be pretty telling here. I think if we can go into the A10 tournament in a top 4 position, in a double bye position, I'll be confident. I'd love to see that Dayton SLU rematch, but I like where we're at. I think we're in a really good position. I think the guys are locked in mentally, and I think we got a shot at making a run through the rest of the season here. I really do.
Yeah, I'm excited. Ross, always great catching up with you, man. And we'll see you soon at Chaifetz. And, it's going to be a hell of a run. Buckle up.
Absolutely. Thanks, Zach. Thanks, Pete. Good to be with you guys.
See you, Ross.
Take it easy, buddy. Yeah, as Ross mentioned there, we've got LaSalle and Bonaventure coming up. It's kind of a tale of two different teams here. LaSalle, who is, just awful, really, truly bad. And then Bonaventure, who is up and down. And I think Bonaventure is one of those games that's going to be a lot like Mason. It's going to be attrition. And I think, we're starting to see Bonaventure wear down a little bit, especially with that short bench that Mark Schmidt likes to run.
Yeah, which is basically no bench. He would play his starters 40 minutes a game if he could, and it seems to be wearing him down. They're 4-4 in conference now, a conference that they were supposed to run away with. Easily the consensus pick, both inside and out of the conference coming into this season. So obviously they had a disappointing non-conference, but that's happening in conference too, and they're coming off 2 straight losses this week. So this team looks vulnerable. They look a little worn out, which isn't totally surprising given how much these guys have played over the past few years. I'd like to think that we can take care of business at home. Bonaventure's always a tricky place to play. But the back-to-back nature of these games, which is happening because of postponement from early in the season, that game at Bonaventure, I think, was supposed to be our second conference game. And now it's been kind of stuffed into a week, and we've shuffled some things around to make it happen. So yeah, we're going to see them twice in a row. But first things first, we got to win at LaSalle. I think the last time we played there was just 2 games ago, where we won by 1, and we needed it. It came down to kind of the last seconds, and we this is a team we have to beat on the. I know it's on the road, but we've got to go into Gola Arena and beat these guys by double digits. There's no excuse otherwise. Like you said, they're just not good. So we'll see how that goes Tuesday night. But it'd be good to get a win there, come home and be ready for Bonaventure, because as much of a struggle they've had this season, they're a good team.
Swimming gifts only on Tuesday night.
Yeah, that works for me.
For the goal of swimming pool.
That's right. We'll have some fun with it.
Yeah, no, I need to catch a game up at Gola, so I can check out the pool, get a workout in, and then go check out the game later. It's a win-win for me, I think.
Wear your trunks under your pants,
Yes, I'll wear the jammers. Yeah, absolutely.
You could pay extra for your game ticket for towel service and a locker.
Do they have, like, when you go into like the club where, like, the guy that has like the colognes? Yeah. Like at the do they have that guy, the bathroom valet?
They do, but they also have that little machine where you put your trunks in to kind of dry them out.
That machine that's a miracle of modern day machinery. It really is. I don't know how it works. Still haven't figured that out. I'm excited for this week. It's going to be a fun week. I'm really not excited about that 4 p.m. Bonaventure game Monday of next week. That's going to stink.
Yeah, it's a weird game time. I don't know why necessarily it had to be that time.
I looked. I thought it might have been a holiday, but it's not.
It's Valentine's Day. It's not a real holiday.
Some of us might consider that the anti-holiday.
I've never. To the extent that I have been able to, I don't really celebrate it. Luckily, my wife's birthday is 2 days before it, so I've always been able to kind of get around it. But yeah, it's there's no reason that it, there's no holiday or any reason it should be like that. I'm sure there's some kind of travel reason or something for it. This was supposed to be an open week for a lot of A10 teams,
right? And
instead, a bunch of postponements have been shoved into it, including our game from LaSalle that was originally supposed to be on the 5th. And then it was supposed to be the day before on the 15th. So we are playing. I mean, we are getting into next week, but we're playing on the 14th and 16th, which is a little awkward. So good news for fans is we've got a lot of games in a short amount of time coming up here, 5 in the next 11 days, 6 in the next 14. So basically every third day we're going to be playing here.
At the risk of being a jinx, it's really starting to feel like reality again. Like basket, like this, you can count on the games being played. Like, at the risk of not jinxing it, I may cut this out. I may cut this out of the episode. Now that I'm saying it,
I honestly think for this season, I think we should be in pretty good shape. That variant worked its way through college basketball pretty hard there in late December and early January, and I think we're through it now. Personally,
yes,
I hope so.
On the women's side, tough week for the Billikens. 60-52 loss at Rhode Island. This is one where the Billikens looked really nice for 3 quarters. Unfortunately, the 3 quarters weren't in a row, and the second quarter did them in. 21-8, I believe, was the difference in that second quarter, and that's the spread that Rhode Island needed to win this one.
Yeah, so I think the score you're calling out, that's actually the next one, the UMass game.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
The theme of this week is they play a really competitive game, but just happen to have get blown out in the second quarter. That it's been the same pattern both times. This one held Rhode Island to 13, I guess, is the good news, but only scored 7. Just a horrible shooting second quarter. I think SLU went 3 for 14 from the field. 1 of 5 from 3, and you're not going to be able to stay in many games with a quarter like that. big mountain to climb, and they just didn't have enough in the second half, unfortunately, in this one.
Yeah, I really liked their game again for most of the time. We looked really competitive against a very, very strong Rhode Island team. I mean, this is
Yeah.
a Rhode Island team competing for a bid
Yes.
and for one of the few times this women's basketball conference could get more than one team. They're generally a one bid league.
Yeah, and that's the important context here is this wasn't just some team. Rhode Island is
Yeah.
17-3, and they're still undefeated 7-0 in the A10. Actually, probably I'm looking at this right now, 8-0 now, because they did win over the weekend as well, but went to 7-0 with this one. Very good team. And it makes you realize like how close SLU is and how devastating
Still.
the injury. Yeah, that's right. How devastating the injuries have been. Um, they aren't getting blown out every night. They're competing. They're just coming up a little bit short, and it's frustrating, I know, for them, and definitely feel bad. But again, it's just kind of the same story in this one.
Yeah. And like we said, the story of the week is that second quarter. But Flowers had a nice game, 16 points, 8 of 12 shooting. Not terribly efficient, but she played well. But the next game, 69-66 loss at UMass. Just a brutal loss. I mean, not that it was a bad team they played, just another brutal way to lose a game. Having a terrible second quarter, like I alluded to, 21-9 was the difference in that second quarter. Otherwise, the Billikens 23-16 Billikens in the first quarter, 15-11 Billikens in the third quarter, and 21-19 Massachusetts in the fourth. So,
yeah,
again, second quarter sinks them.
And it was really anybody's game in the fourth too. This one went back and forth. And again, it's again a point that UMass is 17-5. They're a really good team, 5-3 in the A10. So this isn't just happening against the middle of the conference. And this was a great scoring game for Kaija Harbison, 27 points on 11 of 21 from the field. SLU shot really well from three, which is something they haven't done a lot this season. 50% from three in this game. Didn't go very deep in the bench in this one. And I think you had mentioned that Kylie Bess got hurt in that Rhode Island game, and we didn't see her in this one against UMass. So it does make you wonder, with this team this close, now another player going down, what would this team be like without these injuries? I feel like they'd be right in the mix.
Yeah, I agree. It's a bummer, and I really hope I'm excited for next season because I think there's some potential here for sure. This week another tough, kind of like the men's week. They've got Dayton, who's 9-0, Davidson, who's 3-7 at home on the 9th and the 12th. Dayton obviously always tough, but it's always competitive game. And Davidson is kind of dregs of the A10. It's going to be a tough week for them, I think.
Yeah, it is. Dayton's been the class of a conference for a while, and they're 9-0. But if we can play two good teams like Rhode Island and UMass like that, who knows? Maybe you hang in there. Both of these games are at home. Davidson's one that they might be able to grab. Davidson's a bottom half team, but got to play the games.
One more thing before we get off of basketball, because we love to cover merchandise on this podcast. The jerseys, they're finally here, and I'm not going to say it was worth the wait, but they knocked these out of the park, Peter. I couldn't be happier. As you can see, I got the white one up here. I'm wearing the blue one. It's not an ad. We're not being paid. They're good. They're very nice quality. I mean, they're Nike, so, it's not going to be terrible. But
they're
yeah,
I love the team shop in the arena.
They're at Rally House as well, too,
okay.
which is different.
Ones.
Yeah, which is different. Like that's that was something I did not expect. So I was pleasantly surprised. I actually walked in a rally house to get the gray hat because I wanted to go full on, not Colonel Sanders and the chicken, but I wanted to be, for the blizzard. I wanted, gray goes with the gray jeans with the white. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, I'm just, we went into rally house. I almost missed them too. I almost missed the jersey. They're staring me right in the face. And the blue one, they're $75 at Rally House, $79 at the arena. Wasn't too happy about spending the extra $5, but they only had blue at Rally House though. So, but yeah, super, super happy. Well done all around for the athletic department on this one. And I think the one thing we have left is the 19-9 shorts.
Yeah, and hopefully those will come sooner than later. They might have a couple other partnerships in the works long term, but that's the one that I think has been announced for now.
I think they were working on Peter Millar for a minute.
Yeah,
and it didn't. Something went awry with that one. It just didn't work out, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if it's dead, or if it's just gonna be a while. Who knows?
Yeah, no. So shout out to whoever put this together. I cannot remember who exactly. I know Brent. I think Brent Gallagher did the home field deal. I don't know if he did this one, but shout out to them. And just shout out to the athletic department in general. They're just, for the times I am critical of things that could go on, they are just, it's a wonderful group of people, just on a personal level. Just always been, just it's a good group over there, and that they deserve credit for just how they do things, and when the way they treat longtime season ticket holders. So moving on to track and field. Pete, tell us about what track and field's been up to.
Yeah, the men and women both competed at the Mayo Invitational up at Notre Dame this weekend. Tons of schools were there. Really high-level competitive event. Again, this one, I think it was the third event in a row for them. That's just an individually scored event, not a team scored event. So we can't say SLU came in 12th place or whatever, because who knows. But a lot of Billikens turned in personal bests at the meet. I don't think anybody won events necessarily, but if you're interested, check out the results on slubillikens.com. Just a really good effort there for them. And then men's and women's tennis were supposed to go this weekend, both of them. The men were on the road out in Indiana at Purdue and I think Valpo. The women were supposed to play Humsel at home. Both were canceled. So don't know if that was weather related or something else, but they should, or I guess I should say they're marked as postponed, so maybe those will be rescheduled. But that's really it for your Olympic sports for the week.
Yeah. Speaking of Olympics, it's a apt. It's very what do you call that? Current reference. No, and if you really want to follow track and field, John Bell on Twitter is a great follow. I think it's jbell30. I don't have it in front of me. Sorry, John. He's always tweeting results. So go check him out on Twitter. But that wraps up the week that was in Billiken Athletics. Follow us on Twitter at Midtown Mad Pod, at Peter is a tweeter, at Zach Miller MMP. Thank you to Ross Chaifetz for coming on the podcast. Also shout out the Pitlick brothers, Brad and Eric, for hosting a freezing tailgate. My hands are still not yet thawed. I forgot gloves on that one. We also appreciate, again, any and all suggestions you might have for the show. So tweet us, message us, whatever. Please go and subscribe to the show on all platforms. If you haven't left us a review, don't be afraid to drop us 5 stars and leave a comment. As always, Peter, go Bills.
Go Bills.